Hello and welcome to the Recruit Rockstars podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Hyman. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I interview a world-class expert on talent and recruiting and scaling companies, especially venture capital and private equity-backed companies. And today's guest is fascinating. I love this business. I don't know if it's the name, I don't know if it's the business, but something about it resonated with me. And the company is called Clyde. And we'll talk about why that is in a minute. But Clyde is essentially a totally new way to develop customer loyalty for your business by providing product protection. So when you go to Best Buy, when you go to Apple and you buy anything that's worth anything, you add product protection. It's a great upsell. But that's if you're Best Buy or Apple. What if you're not, right? What if you just have a website? You sell a lot of products. Well, my guest today, Brandon Gell, who started Clyde and is the CEO, has a solution. And we're going to talk about the people part of Clyde. He's already got a team of, dozens of folks. We're going to talk about that. Prior to this, he was a Venture Fellow, Venture for America Fellow. We're going to talk about that too. And graduated from Middlebury College way back in 2016. So with all that said, Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeff. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you. So let's start with Clyde, just kind of an overview. I got to start with why the name Clyde, kind of an unusual name for a customer loyalty, product protection insurance business. Why Clyde?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's not warranted whatever. That was really important to us from day one, was to make sure that the name and the company and our brand and everything about what we did was different than what this industry has done. Because you said it yourself, great product for a customer, great product for a retailer, but when it's run by insurance companies, it usually
it gets screwed up somehow, right?
It gets screwed up somehow when an insurance company is involved. So we wanted to be the antithesis of that. And the real origin for the name is not a great story. It's my job when I was a Venture for America Fellow, I was helping build a robot to automate a part of my job, and we named it Clyde. And it was the same time that I was thinking about this idea.
Fantastic. These great names come from all kinds of places. So this is back in 2017. What was the spark? How did that spark go off in your head, or maybe someone else's head, that made you say, wow, the world needs a product protection online business?
Yeah, I mean, it was really organic. I was helping build a channel strategy for how we were going to sell a product that I was, helping build at my last job. And we were integrating with the firm. We were integrating with Stripe. I had built a Shopify store, these amazing fintech experiences with great customer support. I knew that my customers were going to be taken care of through these third parties. And then we wanted to launch a warranty program too. And that's sort of where the buck stopped. And we, couldn't figure out, I couldn't for the life of me get a conversation started with an insurance company.
Yeah. Because you were too small and they're like, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. We were too small. And, I came to learn if you weren't doing $1 billion in revenue, that was too small.
Wow.
So that was really the inspiration. And then I looked at who was doing it, Best Buy, Apple, and their experiences were great. But they were entirely, their own, that they had built from the ground up.
Sure. So that's how Clyde was born. So I won't put you on the spot for revenues, but let's just talk some kind of metrics. So if I have a site and I offer a product protection upsell, right? Like insurance policy, like what % of consumers typically click yes versus no?
So typically the industry standard is about 4%, which is not a great conversion.
Yeah.
With Clyde, it's about 18%.
Wow.
On average. And it depends on the category. Sometimes it's lower than that.
The more I spend, the more likely I am to buy insurance.
Exactly.
Why is it so much higher than the industry average?
So if you think about, you working directly with an insurance company, and that insurance company saying, hey, why don't we connect you with our insurance company marketing team?
Yep.
You're going to be like, no, thank you. We're going to really try to figure out how to do this ourselves.
Yep.
Versus with Clyde, that's not even really a question, because we give you a piece of JavaScript and we say, this is what you use on your front end. And this piece of JavaScript is a workhorse. It does X, Y, Z, and everybody puts that onto their site. And that is what we use to optimize the call to action, which is different for every customer and different for every product.
Got it. Super easy. So few months ago, you raised 14 million in venture capital led by Spark Capital, along with some other terrific investors. I presume a chunk of that money is to invest in the team and the people part of Clyde, and that's what we want to focus on next. So how big is the team roughly today?
So the team is 22 right now. We'll be 30 by the end of the summer.
All in New York or distributed?
Not all in New York. Definitely distributed, and we're leaning into that, more than ever right now.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So you'll be 30 or plus by the end of the year. So this is fast growing. Tell us a little about how you learned how to build a team and hire people. I mean, you're not just born knowing that. They don't teach it at most colleges. So how did you kind of figure it out? I'm sure you're still figuring it out to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like most young entrepreneurs learned the hard way, which is finding whoever will come work with you in the beginning phases of a company, and then realize
if they can fog up a bathroom mirror, they're hired, right at the beginning.
Yeah. Who's willing to take a risk. But now that we're a Series A company and we have product market fit and we validation from both the retail market and the VC market, that's when you really start to realize that the people that you hire, and I think again this is like newer entrepreneur talking, are the most important thing that you can possibly do, which is my whenever people are asking me like what's the best thing that I've learned, that's 100% it. Just because the quality of what you end up building is a lot higher, and also if you're a CEO, the quality of your life is a lot higher.
Got it. So I'm sure you made some mistakes along the way, which we'll talk about in a minute if you'll be that candid. But what hires, or you don't have to name names, but what types of hires were game changers, really kind of propelled the business to, wow, like this kind of level? Were there particular nodes or particular hires or particular functions or maybe particular types of people?
Yeah, I think that, so for us, it was around growth and product, where we are leaning into most aggressively right now from a hiring perspective, and we have we did that previously and we're continuing to do it now. A lot of the reason that I think that it's so important to lean into that and make sure you're bringing the right person on is it's an unlock for the growth of the business, but it's also a major unlock for every individual that works at the company. If you can take something off of your plate and give it to someone who's going to do it better than you, that's going to unlock you to really figure out what you're good at, and put more time and effort into that. In terms of the type of people, I think that we're really looking for two things when we hire somebody. Experience is like the number one thing. That's the way to sort of de-risk your hiring. If they've done it before at companies that have been great, they probably know how to do it great again.
And I guess in your case, that's primarily e-commerce, fintech type of companies?
Correct. Yeah. So we think about it a lot like, how do we de-risk this hire, basically? Yeah.
What have you learned about how to do that? So once you find the candidates, data says that,
Gotcha.
that interviewing candidates is actually one of the worst ways to assess a candidate.
Yes.
So what have you learned about other ways potentially to de-risk the hire?
So backchanneling 100% is like the best way to go about doing that.
Walk us through briefly how you do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of it is, it's really hard. And also, if you think about, it's also very biased. So, people that look like me, I'm much more likely to be connected with them on LinkedIn, and I'm much more likely to be able to back channel on them. And if I'm able to back channel, even if I'm able to back channel, period, that is a leg up for that person, unless of course the back channel comes back negatively. But there's a lot of cases where, you just can't back channel because that person maybe has experience, with an industry that you're not in, even though they're fantastic. So, back channeling is really powerful because it's just the rawest way to get someone's opinion. But it's also very dangerous because you end up hiring people that look like you.
When you say back channel, you're talking about speaking with people that have worked with them before, Do you do it more for sourcing, meaning finding candidates, or more for like back channel reference checking?
Uh, so it's definitely both. I'd say the more effective, uh, and maybe this is because it just imprints in your head a little bit more. Is back channeling for a candidate that you're excited about. I've had situations where I back channeled, got a negative impression from somebody, and was like, "This is candidate's done. I won't hire them," because I respect the person I back channeled.
Right.
And then
You
other ways,
dodged the bullet in that case.
exactly, yeah. And because I think what you said earlier is interviewing is the worst way to it's very easy to present nicely, basically.
Sure.
So
And vice versa. There's a lot of people that don't interview very well that are amazing.
exactly. So that's why I think back channeling is really important. And I think just looking at experience, if we are looking for somebody to do XYZ, either they need to have done that before and show that, they can do it successfully, or we need, evidence that they didn't know that at their last company and they were able to successfully
Yeah.
do it.
They have the cognitive ability to kind of figure out, crack a problem. So
Yeah.
let's give an example, again, no names mentioned or even position, of a mishire where you did hire someone and it didn't work out. What did you miss?
Yeah.
Had you identified, it would have given you a heads up that this wasn't going to work. It was kind of predestined to fail. And what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah. I think I've definitely a situation that I can think of where we hired somebody who had never worked for a startup when we were definitely a startup.
This was a big company person.
This is a big company person. They'd worked at big banks, um, and in marketing departments at big banks, and um, it just didn't work out, and I think that the speed that we move, and that any startup has to move, is just not conducive to somebody who is optimized to work in like a big corporate structure.
Yeah.
It's just different skills.
And
Um,
and to be fair, they might be able to make the transition, but there's a big risk there. And you talked a lot about de-risking it. Do you want to be the guinea pig that has to find out if she can make that transition? Or would you rather her go to an early stage company, improve it, and then you hire her, right?
right, and I think that's where you sort of need to combine these two different interview processes of, what is your experience and how is it applicable to what we're asking you to do here, and how's your performance been in other roles, not necessarily from references that you are explicitly directing me towards.
How long have you learned to give it before you realize that you've made that mistake? I'm guessing it's happened more than once. Do you give it a week, a month, a quarter, a year? Do you wait till they quit?
If you're feeling it, it's not right. And I think I have learned that the hard way, and I think everybody who started the company and hired people has learned that the hard way. And it seems like you have to learn it the hard way, especially when you really want it to work out. But that is perhaps the best advice, which is if you think it's not right, it's not
It's
going
not
to get.
right. Well, and the inverse is not true, which is your gut on hiring. You can't trust your gut on hiring, but to your point, Brendan, you can trust your gut on the other end, right?
Yeah.
If it's not working out. Yeah, that's a great.
And if you've given everybody you always need to be conducive of giving everybody every opportunity to execute and succeed. But I think that 3 months in, you're going to be ready to know whether or not it's working out. And
Yeah.
my suggestion is to follow through on that feeling immediately.
I'm going to ask you a question and ask you to show some vulnerability and enter the danger with me.
Sure.
This is your first time managing 30 people. So you're managing managers, right? So you've gone from starting this thing to managing people, now managing managers. What's been the biggest surprise or growth piece for you that you've had to really get your arms around fast, that you
Yeah.
maybe underestimated and said, that's easy, I can figure that out? And you're like, oh shit, this is actually pretty hard.
Yeah, I can think very clearly to when we started to really hire, and it went from when you're starting a business, you're doing everything. You're selling, you're the account manager, you're the engineer, you're everything. And when we really started hiring, I started getting this feedback. I'm also the type of person that when someone sends a Slack message, I answer it immediately. And then, when I need to focus, I turn off all messages and you can't communicate with me. So I started getting this feedback really early on when we were really hiring, which was, it wasn't that I was micromanaging. It was that I was uh, answering every question, and I wasn't giving my team the opportunity to answer it themselves. Which, in my mind, it was, oh, I can just answer it, 3 times faster than you can. So why wouldn't I do that? And I had to be taught that that's not the right answer.
Right. Well, it is in wartime conditions and the short game, it may make sense. But to your point, if you're playing the long game and you want to develop your people and let them make mistakes and skin their knees, it's no different than raising kids, right?
Yeah.
You need to bite your tongue, which is hard when you know the answer, right?
Yeah. So that was a very hard lesson to learn. But if you can, be
Who gave
receptive.
you that feedback? Was that your team or your board and VCs, or how did
That's
you?
my team. Absolutely. And the way that we do feedback is we're really candid, and people have one-on-ones and they're encouraged to give raw feedback.
Yeah.
And now we have a more formalized way of doing reviews. And I just got my 360 review. Everybody at the company gave me one, and it was, what should I keep doing? What should I stop doing? And what should I start doing? Just
Great.
very basic.
Yeah. I want to shift gears to one last topic before we wrap up, and that's, would be ignorant of me if we didn't touch base on COVID and how it's affected working in a distributed environment. So in
Yeah.
the pre-interview, you kind of said you're based in New York area, but not everyone is in New York. And now with hiring, I assume you're even looking outside New York, because why not, right?
Yeah.
What has worked in leading the team distributed that you were kind of surprised that maybe it's been easier than you thought? And what's been especially hard for the team?
Yeah. So when COVID first hit and we became distributed, my initial concern was around productivity, and I learned very quickly that that is not the concern whatsoever. The concern is actually burnout, because there's no way of removing yourself from work, and
Yeah.
that's something that the team has spoken about, that I've spoken about, and uh, we've encouraged people to like give work space. Um, so that's definitely been something that like we've had to sort of adapt to.
Yeah.
I'd say the thing that's been really challenging has been where we used to have this super organic culture, and we do a very organic culture still, but where ideas were shared openly and people were hanging out. You don't have that anymore. Um, so we have meetings twice a week that are all team meetings, and they end up being very much so work focused. So just being conscious of trying to throw things into that aren't work focused, and making sure that there's openness to just hang out is really important.
And is that more about the relationship building, or is it more about building in those moments where the light bulb goes on and you're like, yeah, we should do this, or here's a new feature? Is it more around innovation or more around trust and relationship building?
I think it's more around trust and relationship building, because a lot of innovation is built off of problems, and like we still have problems and we still can answer those problems.
Yeah.
Um, I I think a lot of the relationship building aspects become a lot harder, and even though we work hard to make sure that that's not the case, it's not bumping somebody into somebody in the hallway and deciding to go get a cup of coffee.
Yeah. What's an example of something you've built in that has tried to take the place of that?
So, I mean, I think Donut is a tool in Slack that a lot of companies use. We use that, so that's just setting up coffee dates with people. We do a question at the end of every meeting that like sort of sparks
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
We have open spaces to talk about what's going on in the world. So whether that's diversity and inclusion, or Black Lives Matter, or COVID, like we have spaces to talk about that. Um, and we just did a really fun event in quotation marks, where we had a comedian come into our Zoom and basically just make fun of everybody for an hour, which was really fun.
I love it. Hopefully starting with you.
I, that's what I wanted him to do, but for some reason I didn't get burned, which was
They're always
bummer.
worried about the guy paying the bill. They're like, does he have a sense of humor?
I was just waiting, and I never happened.
Well, Brandon, I give you a ton of credit. You are clearly onto something. This is a terrific product that's necessary. You got 4 times the industry average engagement. You've raised money from the top investors on the planet, and it's your first time. You're kind of learning it as you go, and you're clearly a very humble, straight guy. So I really appreciate you sharing what you've learned with the audience. How can people learn more about Clyde or get in touch?
Yeah, so everybody can go to joinclyde.com. There's a ton of information there. Or people can feel free to reach out to me directly at b@joinclyde.com. I'm very accessible. I think those are probably the 2 best ways to access us.
Fantastic. I can't thank you enough for making the time today, and wish you the best. And we look forward to seeing more big things from Clyde and from you, Brandon.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Jeff.